Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Matriarchal Voices by the Matriarchy Times. We are joined today by Dr. Kirti Patel. She has joined us before, and today is a special day as she's also celebrating 1 year of her own podcast, the Gynarchy podcast, which I hope that you all have listened to as well. If you haven't, I recommend that you go and check that out. So, hello, Dr. Kirti, and how are you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for having this, inviting me back on. I appreciate it.
So, can we ask you what inspired you to start your Gainagi podcast 1 year ago, and how has it been? Like, how has the journey been? Are you where you want to be, or
Well, what inspired me was, I'm an OBGYN doctor. I've been working for over 25 years, and I just started getting, I just have talked to so many women, thousands of women over the years, and that was my inspiration because I just felt like there was a gap. There's often a gap in knowledge about, that women have about their bodies and their health. And I felt like there's not enough time in a doctor's visit to talk about all the things and educate in the way I wanted to. So I felt like there was a need for education about women's bodies, women's health. But the other thing I noticed was, taking care of women over the years, of course, I just learn about women's lives so much. And it just hit me, it just struck me how much our patriarchal society really negatively affects women. And we don't even know it. We're all raised from such a young age, um, basically brainwashed with so much of patriarchal values and we don't even realize how much our own thinking about women and others thinking about women impacts us daily on the daily from a young age. And so much of it affects women's lives, not just their health, but their entire lives, and leaves them in vulnerable positions. So, and it was just very striking to me how that's very interconnected with women's health. I mean, mental health, physical health, it's all linked with our environment and our relationships and our work life and all the things we do. So I just had a lot to say and a lot of things I wanted to share with other women. And so that's what inspired the podcast. And it's been like, I think your question was about, do I feel like it's achieving what I wanted to achieve? I mean, for me, it's just priceless. It's just personally very fulfilling to have this outlet to share my views because it's so frustrating as a doctor sometimes seeing problems and not being able to completely fix them. So it's given me an opportunity to share my thoughts and educate others and build my own community of women who feel the same way. And each of my guests is so inspiring and so smart and um, have such deep insight into the problems of women and health problems, but societal problems. And I've learned so much personally from them. When I started the podcast, I was very much aware that this could completely horribly fail. But I just said to myself, if it even helps just one person, I'm going to feel very satisfied. I'm going to be very happy. And it's helped me. So that's important to me. But it also I know it's helped other women. And it just, it's still small, but it's growing organically. And I already think it's a success. It doesn't have to blow up into some international phenomenon for me to feel that it's a success. But I do hope to keep growing organically and reaching more women around the world and for us to keep building these communities.
if I could say something, probably everyone that I know in this community and this space, in this feminist space, has heard about you. So I think you're doing better than you realize.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm so flattered. And yeah, our mission aligns with each other. So, and I see other women building platforms to bring other women together. And some of them have been on my platform. And, in line with matriarchal or gynarchal values, right? We are not competitors. We are trying to move the needle in the same together direction together in so our communities can overlap. And I
Yes.
love that. I love that. We help each other.
Yes. Out of all the people that you have spoken to, you said that you have spoken to so many women and heard so many stories. Which story like stayed with you the most? Which one do you feel had some transformative effect on you?
Ooh, that's hard. So like I said, I've learned so much from every guest, but I guess if I think about a couple of the ones that are particularly powerful, especially now with what's going on in the United States, I would say one of my early episodes about abortion and birth control would be one of them, about the attacks on abortion and birth control. I had a guest on Dr. Diane Horvath, who is an abortion provider in Maryland. And it was, very important to talk about what is going on in this country and how much that is harming women's lives. And even, women are now dying because of lack of access to abortion and the dangers of not being able to provide birth control to women. So I thought that was a fantastic episode, and very important. And we should keep talking about that. And another one I thought that was very powerful was the author Jessica Clarko. My episode was called Women, Society, Safety Net. And we talked on that episode about her book called Holding It Together, How Women Became um, America's Safety Net. And I thought that's an excellent book. I highly recommend everyone read that. But she shared so many amazing points. I don't think we realize and recognize enough how much our modern society depends on women, and they place zero value on the work of women. Women are doing so much unpaid labor, emotional and physical labor every day, caring for others. And our entire toxic capitalist system is built on the backs of women. And so I think that was really a great episode to highlight that, these things aren't, feminism is not a fringe issue. It is deeply, important to how our day-to-day lives run. We need to bring it into conversations every day about what's going on in this country. It's not just about abortion and birth control. It's about how our whole society runs.
I think that when you say emotional labor, I feel that when the governments and the people in charge decide to take over governing what women do with their bodies and their reproductive rights, it's another kind of labor that they're forcing onto women, forcing them to take over um, the task of having children, even though they cannot or don't want to, and
Yes.
forcing them out of some kind of freedom, forcing them to have to make decisions without proper choices. And this is also kind of labor that's being forced onto them. So, what do you think what in real terms? I'm from a country where we have never and do not have legal access to abortion. So, in the US,
This is
at
Sri
least,
Lanka, right?
yeah,
Sri Lanka?
yes.
Okay.
So in the US, at least in some places or at some time or another in your history, there was legal access and now it's been taken back. So how has this been affecting women in reality, not just politically or economically? Really, what are the women going through?
Thank you for reminding me about your situation in Sri Lanka. And it reminds me, yeah, that I want to reach women around the world because that's deeply unfair that women don't have access to abortion in some countries at all. And you're absolutely right. We do have places in the US, like blue states in particular, those are Democratic states, where we do still have access to abortion, but that is being actively taken away in other parts. In some red states, it is probably similar to Sri Lanka, in other countries where you don't have abortion rights, and it is frankly dangerous. Women are being pulled, like our ancestors, like women of the past, fought long and hard to get us the right in the US to have abortions. And now with Roe v. Wade being repealed, we are returning to darker times, like in the past. I mean, the inspiration in the past was women dying, frankly. Women dying for pregnancies sometimes that were never going to reach full term and result in a baby. So dying for fetal cells that don't have consciousness yet. And it's just deeply painful that we don't honor the human being, women in front of us, um, and take care of them and prioritize them over an unborn, undeveloped clump of cells, frankly. So um, I'm not sure. Did I go way off track?
No,
Please bring me back to if didn't completely answer your question, you can remind me. Yeah.
no, you were on track to answer like what the women are going through by having their rights taken away, basically. Like they're putting themselves in danger. So if I compare it to what we face here, obviously there are illegal methods and there are illegal medicines being sold. I mean, the proper misoprostol and mifestrone medicine, but sold illegally under the counter
Mhm.
and at
It's
exorbitant
dangerous.
prices, of course, exorbitant
Right.
prices.
Right.
And
And it's right. Unregulated abortion. Abortion does not get eliminated when you pass these laws. Abortion just happens under the table and in more dangerous ways, life-threatening ways to women. And to your other point, you know, like about women not being able to choose when to have children, whether to have children and when to have children. This is just horrible times. People are struggling just to feed themselves and be employed and feed themselves and take care of their families. And then to add to that mix, an unintended pregnancy, you're really risking people's livelihoods. This doesn't just affect women, this affects families. Some families already have several children and are living paycheck to paycheck. It's so unfair to not let people dictate their own lives, make their own decisions about what their family and futures should be.
I mean, the families themselves get torn apart by having to decide. And most of the time, the women don't have the choice of walking away. So the women are the direct targets of
Right,
all this eventually. Because no matter
right,
how far they run, they can't run away from a pregnancy that they can't decide what to do with.
right. Right. You have to face that. It's very risky also to have to carry a pregnancy, especially in these times when we don't have adequate um, health care for women or even enough doctors. That's another thing we're seeing is that in these places where they're passing these horrible laws, nobody wants to work there. OBGYNs like myself, I would never, because it's very dangerous for doctors to work in these places. They're trying to arrest doctors for providing good medical care, life-saving medical care to women. And so doctors are not taking jobs in these places or fleeing those places. And I think something that people don't seem to grasp or should talk about more is that, this affects all women, not just women who are fertile or, could get pregnant. Like when doctors leave, we already have a shortage. When doctors leave, that is longer wait times, more difficult to find a doctor to take care of you for preventative things. Women are going to start dying of preventable things like cervical cancer or breast cancer or other emergencies or diseases.
Because what everyone who is supposedly pro-life is forgetting is that when they put the lives of the OBGYNs and the doctors who are providing female medical care in danger, it's not just abortions that they're stopping. I mean, you
Absolutely.
all are taking care of women who are carrying their pregnancies to term, who are looking for fertility treatments, who are there for other reproductive health issues. I mean, it's not just abortion. And that's why is it
Absolutely.
so difficult for people to understand that?
I don't know. I mean, I wish everyone would wake up because the other thing is we earlier talked about how everything runs on the backs of women's free labor, right? Women
Yeah,
taking care of children, women taking care of the elderly, women doing charity, volunteering for their church and communities. I mean, society depends on women doing all these things out of love and their um, care and concern for their communities and their families. And so when something happens to these women, it affects so many lives. Women are not just, living in isolation. So many people depend on women.
exactly. I mean, we know how much we get done in a day, and if we're not there, if we're not well, like how everything just starts to fall apart. So it's like the patriarchal people who are benefiting from the patriarchy think that things just happen. They don't know that there are actual peoples behind making things happen. So these
Yes.
delusions, they're pretty delusional, to be honest, to be very honest.
I wish, my audience is not men, but I wish men would understand that the patriarchy harms them as well, right? Because
Yeah,
really who is benefiting, it's not all men. It's not man versus woman, or women versus men. Feminism is not women versus men. Feminism is actually like against the system, which actually harms most people. It's the patriarchy is really just benefiting the very this hierarchy, which really just benefits men at the very top, the very richest, and they're usually white men. So you know yeah, I wish men would wake up and realize like they are also victims. Like you really don't want bad things to happen to all the women in your life because that's going to negatively impact your life.
I always thought that was like the biggest problem with having an algorithm. I know that algorithms are made so that people see content that they are interested in just for the purpose of advertising and stuff. But I feel like if you are watching content that is harmful to other people or content that gives you like improper mindsets, that algorithms should be designed to show you content that shows you a different perspective or actually helps you to get on the right path. But algorithms don't work that way, and that's something that really bugs me. And that's nothing we can
That's such a
change.
good point. Such a good point. I know there's so much. Um, I think this has been amplified. A lot of this toxic masculinity and has been amplified by these algorithms because they're rage bait, right?
Exactly. Like if you like this kind of thing, okay, let me show you more of it. That's what happens.
Right.
Speaking of rage bait, I heard that you actually had some problems online with some misogynists and direct attacks to you. What was that like? What was that experience, and how did you manage to deal with it?
Oh my goodness, it is really horrible. It's actually horrible to go viral. I sometimes think about this. I actually think about this a lot because it was a very bad experience. I angered Andrew Tate by saying something mean about him. I'm a nobody. I mean, I'm just like a doctor in Massachusetts, okay? And I had an opinion that he didn't like, and he said something negative about me, and then all his trolls came out. And it was just quite disgusting. As you know, all these anonymous trolls. This was when I was on Twitter, a very toxic platform, which I don't use very much now at all. I don't really use it. I keep my account there just so no one can take the handle. But that is a very toxic platform, and I avoid it now. But all his ugly, disgusting, anonymous trolls came out and said very horrible, racist things about me, but also like I got death threats and rape threats and literally I was doxxed and, kind of afraid that someone was going to come and get me in person, like kill me. So it was a little scary. And but I just also thought, like, how ridiculous you're angered by some words, one person's opinions, like how fragile these men are. I also, it just made me realize, like, after that horrible experience, like, why am I fighting trolls online? Like after that started happening, I should have just, I did do that after that, just blocked people. And that's not my audience. I was never going to change some angry little man's mind about women and how to view women, right? My audience is women. So I've decided, like, now, because of that horrible experience, like, you know what? I don't want to be interacting with these people as much as I can. I ignore and I avoid. So I'm not on Twitter. I'm now on Blue Sky, which is much more wholesome. And when you block people there, it's a nuclear block. Like they're gone, from your existence. Unlike Twitter, where they can still lurk and read your things you know, um, and what I like about that is I don't go as viral. I'm not very as big, but like things won't catch fire like they maybe do on Twitter, and it's not rage bait. But I like the opportunity to share my opinions. I am not here to fight with anybody. I am trying to build a community and talk to women, educate women, share my experiences and with women and have other women and people, other feminists, maybe not women, sorry, um, also to kind of, build, like, focus on positivity and what we can do, how we can reclaim our power, inspire and empower each other to make changes in our lives and in the greater society for the good of all. Um, I do find it ironic. The last point I want to make is I have thought about this. Like, I really don't want to go viral and be super famous because it just attracts these weirdos and horrible people, But I do find it ironic that I have a podcast and like its success really does depend on me building an audience and having a larger audience. So that conflict is something I'm still working through. I don't know how to do this without attracting more attention from also negative people.
I don't think there's any way out of it as long as we're living in a patriarchy. We are going to have to deal with this. I mean, even we have the same issue with our community. So we have our enemies, we have the people who don't like what we're doing, but still, on the plus side, there are so many people who do like what we're doing and who get inspired by our content. And like you mentioned, even if you can help one person, it'll be worth it in the end. So I
Yes.
think that's why we
Yes.
keep going.
Absolutely. I am inspired by other women who are so brave in the world because, this takes courage to be attacked like that and to have fears that you're going to be, killed or raped or attacked or, somebody is going to hunt you down because they don't like your little opinion. Um, but unfortunately, these times we live in, these toxic times we live in, we must share, we must try to build a community, and we have to be courageous. I mean, I try to just think about other women out there like Malala or these young women. I mean, they're so amazing. Malala or Greta Thunberg, you know, just they are just driven by their goals and their vision for what the world can be. And they take a lot of personal risk. Like, I
Yeah.
can't imagine being them and getting so much attention, a lot of negative attention, I bet. And that takes so much courage. That's who I admire.
Yeah, they are really great. I mean, there are so many inspiring women we meet every single day. I mean, we do podcasts, you do. There are so many women out there who are just fighting a real good fight. So,
Yes.
coming back to your podcast, which is called the Gynarchy podcast, I'd like you to explain, like, what does a Gynarchy look like to you?
So I thought the Gynarchy was just a very appropriate name for me as a gynecologist, and it's a real word that means rule by women, and I really use it as a, for me personally, I define it like I regard it as a synonym of the matriarchy, and it's basically, a counterpoint to the patriarchy. It is a leadership style. The matriarchy or the gynarchy is a leadership style that is women inspired, inspired by women's leadership. And what that looks like is like a lot of the matriarchal, all we have to do is look at the matriarchal societies that have existed in the world. And their values are more egalitarian, more community oriented, more caring about others. And that is, it's a more of a flat structure and not a hierarchy like the patriarchy. It's just much more wholesome. It's just healthier for humanity and the environment, our planet, frankly. Um, so I think the thing I often like to share with this is I think men find it very intimidating to hear that we want a matriarchy or a gynarchy, because they think that we will operate in a fashion similar to them and shut them out and, treat them badly. But that is not what a matriarchy or a gynarchy is. We're very different than how men do things. We are not trying to use power to oppress others, And there are roles for men as well, just like there are women in leadership positions in the patriarchy. There could be men in leadership positions in the gynarchy, or the matriarchy, but they have to align with our values.
That's exactly the same thing that we also kind of perpetuate, that we are not looking to take over, but mainly we want to change, no longer have a capitalist economy, ruling with feminine values, everything will be better. But just having this fear from them, this reaction from them, that they're so afraid of us taking charge, for the simple reason that they're scared that we'll do the same thing they did, is so ironic and so hilarious in one way.
Yes,
I
yes.
feel sorry for them sometimes.
It actually shows their type of thinking if they're fearful of women being in power. It's like, why, that you have an advantage then. You know that you're using
Yeah.
your position to oppress others, and you don't want that for yourself because you think we'll do that. It's very, yeah, I agree. It shows a lot.
Where do you see the feminist movements in the US heading now? Do you see them heading towards a kind of matriarchal, dynarchical future, or is it different than what we think?
Well, I think, having looked at this, like where we're at in history, I think ever since the Me Too movement, we're kind of in this fourth wave of feminism where we are connecting online, like what you and I are doing right now. And we're using a lot of of resources on the internet and social media to connect with each other, communicate with other women, build communities, and fight back against some of these patriarchal, toxic patriarchal notions like, the sexism, the sexual harassment, sexual assault, and also some of these racist and, homophobic views, right? So I find it sometimes ironic, like that we are. in this current wave using like these technology platforms to fight back against the patriarchy because a lot of these technology platforms are built by men and with patriarchal values, and they are so it's kind of ironic and interesting that we are using their own platforms to fight back against them and gaining power. Um, I don't know when the next wave, the fifth wave, will start, and I don't know that will look like. But I do think that we are kind of setting the stage and forming the base of that, like with our communities and our growing power and our power in numbers, to kind of influence what the next thing will be. If we look around the world, we can maybe see some things happening like women in leadership positions, like in Mexico, or, in Korea, they're facing their toxic masculinity, toxic patriarchal system with like things like the 4B movement. So, I don't know what the next wave is going to look like, but I do hope, I mean, I think that's a wonderful thought that we could just move in the next wave to a matriarchy or having more matriarchal societies. So let's think positive and think we can do it. But I do think that, we get pushed back quite a bit and we have to try to regain some of the rights we lost too. So, so that's going to be work.
Yeah, that's actually a very important point that we have to start some things all over again. Like some ground that
Yes.
we had gained, some traction we had gained is just being like reversed with one political decree, like a single
Yes.
thought, a single ruling of somebody, and suddenly we are set back years of fighting. So it's hard moving forward, but like you said, matriarchies are community centered. They're not hierarchical. So since we are building our communities online and we are building our spaces, maybe it'll start working from the inside out. Maybe we can become strong at the core, which is online, and eventually we will spread out into the real world as a matriarchy.
Yes. I'm really hopeful for that. I mean, if we just look at history, women have moved forward. It's just a fact, And I think that a lot of this backlash from powerful men is really because we have made so many advances. Women are intimidating. Women are getting so many more college degrees. Women are starting businesses. Women are going to hold more of the wealth in the world by 2030. So women are going to be powerful and influence things. And I think that is exactly why some of our rights are being stripped right now by men who are in fear of women's power. So I don't think it's a hopeless time. I actually think this is just normal way that history progresses. Unfortunately, we're living in a historic time that's kind of ugly and is painful, but and it's unfortunate, but we have a role here. We don't want to get depressed about it. We want to just keep fighting and just recognize that actually this is happening because we have been so successful. We are better off than our mothers were and their mothers were, and our children are going to be better off than we are.
I think you mentioning depression is also quite significant there because at the moment the world is undergoing a global mental health crisis. So women choosing not to have children just for the sake of not passing on trauma, unlike themselves who had to endure their parents' trauma because mental health was something that you don't talk about. So, in that sense, also, if someone feels unprepared to be able to give a wholesome, proper, mentally strong guidance to a child, and they don't want to have a child, and then they have to face these abortion bans and everything, it's just a very
Mm.
scary time in that way.
Absolutely. One of the things I love about our current feminist wave and movement and the types of creators that I follow online is there's also a really big segment of women who are focusing more on self-care. prioritizing themselves, which I really actually very much believe in. You cannot do good work in the world and take care of your even your children or family unless you have first taken care of yourself, worked on your mental health, your physical health, your needs, basic needs in life, and feel that you're in a position to give to others. Give to yourself first, practice self-love. And I think that that is the basis from where women should operate always. I also love these creators that you know, like dating influencers that ask women to choose partners that are helping them, really helping them, not looking for, a homemaker and, a child care provider, but really someone who just wants women to glow, a woman to just be in her full power. So that's also very important, don't find a partner until you've taken care of yourself and, feel in a good place and find a partner that is helping you do that instead of taking away from your energy and power.
And also, they'll have to make sure they are somewhere safe before they decide to say no, because some men don't take no for an answer. So do it carefully.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a societal problem. We need to protect women better. Absolutely.
So, once again, I'd like to congratulate you for completing 1 year of the Gynarchy podcast.
Thank
Um,
you.
so what if you could dedicate your podcast right now, your 1 year anniversary podcast to someone, who would it be?
Well, I'm going to say my mother. I had a little party in the summer for to celebrate my 1 year where I invited, friends, families, fans, just my little network, local network, who of people who have supported this podcast. And I flew my parents out to come to the party, and it was just so satisfying to have them there. They're both so important to me and inspire me. And my mother, especially, I would dedicate this to because I think a lot of times online I see women criticizing the boomer women for their views. There's sometimes toxic views. But my view of my mom and all women is that we are all victims of the patriarchy. We have all been raised with some toxic beliefs, and a lot of it has become embedded in our thinking. And so sometimes my mother and I will butt heads about some views, because, and I try to remember, my goodness, what was it like growing up in that generation? I mean, women of that generation were married off as teens. And my mother is a standout because though she sometimes like has some backwards beliefs like a lot of South Asian women, she also is such a standout in her own life. Like, um, she grew up in a village in India, and my grandfather, she was the first born, and she must have done very well in school. She was very smart and did so well and my grandfather must have been kind of forward thinking because he actually sent her to college. She's the first person in her family to go to college, and she met my father there, and they met and basically had a love marriage, which was also unusual for their generation. Um, and so that's the second thing that's unusual about her. And then they came to America, and she had a job and not did not just stay home. So that's a third thing that is kind of feminist about her. And another thing was she kept separate bank accounts from my father. I'm sure he didn't like it. But my father is also a feminist, and he's, they're still married, and he supports her, and she's had a separate bank account, always had to have some of her own money, which is another very forward thing for that generation. And she's also just a kind of a difficult woman. I mean,
Okay.
I'm a difficult woman. A lot of us are, like Jane Goodall says, like it's very easy to be a difficult woman. That's why there's so many of us. She does what she wants. She's very strong. And despite her upbringing and some of these beliefs that have been kind of, you know, they've tried to indoctrinate her with, she's very strong. She's unusual for her generation. And her daughters, and my siblings were, a product of both of our parents, and we've moved forward and are more feminist and even stronger. And I look forward to my children being even more, my son and daughter being even more feminist than me and pushing the needle even further. So that's who I would dedicate it to. She's my inspiration and also the type of woman that, like, not just inspires me, but, it just highlights that we have this dichotomy. We have to fight some of our own negative beliefs about women and ourselves.
I think that's brilliant because she's your literal matriarch, your own mother. So
Yes,
that's a wonderful
thank
idea.
you. She is. She really is.
So, Doctor, I really enjoy talking to you today, and there's so much that I learned from you and got an idea about. Is there anything that you would like to share with our audience before we wind up for today?
No, I think you covered a lot. Thank you so much for having me on. It was really delightful to talk to you again and circle back after our early conversation. And I like that we
Yeah,
keep supporting each other.
thank you so much for coming. And just to recap, everybody, please go watch the Gynarchy podcast if you haven't yet. And Dr. Kirti recommended was the book Keep Holding On. Am I getting that right?
Um,
Oh,
holding it
yeah.
together, how women became America's safety net. And that's by Jessica Calarco. She's a professor, and she has an episode with me, so feel free to watch. You can find us on most podcast platforms, and you can follow me on the socials at the Gynarchy. So
Yes, and if you have watched our previous episodes, you know that we always encourage you to support female creators as well as read
thank
books
you.
written by women. So please
Yes.
do expand your horizons and look into these things, especially when they're recommended by someone who is fighting for a matriarchal future. So
Thank you
thank
for
you.
giving me another podcast episode. We do need to support women creators and businesses as much
No
as we
problem.
can.
No problem. And I hope that we can maybe have you back again in future when time permits.
Anytime, of course. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for watching, everybody. And I hope you enjoyed this episode and have a nice day.